Alrighty. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brittany Chor from APSIA, the Consortium of Graduate Schools of International Affairs Worldwide. It's a pleasure to be here with y'all today, and I want to thank um, Molly Giblin from Princeton in Asia Fellowships for being here today. Just a couple of housekeeping items before I pass it over to her. Um, I would like to invite everybody to drop their name and institution in the chat to introduce themselves, and please feel free to drop your questions in there as they arise. I will be monitoring the chat and making sure that your questions get answered towards the end of the call. At this time, if I'm sorry, at this time, I'd love to pass it over to Ms. Giblin. Thanks.
Thank you, Brittany. Hi, I'm Molly Giblin. I'm Director of Programs at Princeton in Asia, and thanks for joining us today. I'm really happy to get to share a little bit more about our programs with you. And if you're already familiar with us or whether you've just encountered Princeton in Asia for the first time, I would love to fill in a little bit more information about who we are and what we do. First of all, I'll share a little bit more about our mission at Princeton in Asia. We were founded in 1898 by graduates of Princeton University, although today we accept graduates of any university. And our mission is to foster mutual appreciation and cross-cultural understanding between the United States and Asia through immersive work fellowships in host organizations and communities. And we connect service-minded graduates and host organizations with meaningful work in a way that will transform their perspectives and hopefully lead to lifelong friendships. Our fellowships are immersive 1 or 2 year experiences, which have an emphasis on living, learning, and working in a new culture and community. We're an independent nonprofit, and although we are not Princeton University, we are located on campus at Princeton University. And PIA awards competitive fellowships to recent college graduates. And what that means is pretty ambiguous. So when we're thinking about what recent is, we don't really have a year limit. We've had people who are rising seniors apply, and we've also had people, including our executive director, who did the program later in their 20s, a number of years after graduating. Many of our fellowships are intended for kind of entry-level folks, but we also do have some that have a more specialized skill set, and some host organizations express a preference for people with a little bit of work experience or master's degrees. The only limitation is that we don't currently accept people with terminal degrees such as JDs, PhDs, or MDs. In the class of 2022, there were 22 PIA fellows working at 18 different host organizations in 8 countries across Asia. And these fellows graduated from 21 different universities with a wide range of degrees and backgrounds, from international affairs to music to packaging engineering. And after their fellowships, they will join a community of over 3,400 PIA alumni who span the globe and are notably engaged in and supportive of PIA's ongoing work. For our incoming class of 2023, we anticipate having more than 40 fellows. It's actually going to be 45, it looks like right now, in 11 countries. And we're adding some exciting posts this year, including at an English language daily newspaper in South Korea and an environmentally focused think tank in Taiwan. Our fellows are placed at a variety of organizations and institutions, from kindergartens in Japan to universities in Mongolia and Kazakhstan, and from an environmental NGO in Sri Lanka to a film festival in Laos. We've even sent fellows to a rock climbing company in Thailand, and that's one of our longer standing partners, and more recently to a family-owned sake brewery in rural Japan. We have a number of focus areas or issue areas, including arts and culture, economic development, education, environmental sustainability, peace, justice, and access to information or journalism, public health, sports, and STEM. And we are committed to developing long-term relationships with our host organizations in the spirit of mutuality. We want fellows to really encounter people who are helping them to engage in a transformative experience and to be able to contribute in meaningful ways to the community in which they are working and living. The fellowships that are available in a given year may change, but the work experience is always rooted in meaningful cross-cultural exchange. For the 2024 to 25 fellowship year, we anticipate offering 60 fellowship positions in 12 different countries and regions, which will be Cambodia, Indonesia, Japan, Kazakhstan, Laos, Mongolia, Singapore, South Korea, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Thailand, and Vietnam. And the list is always subject to a little bit of change depending on geopolitical circumstances, but this is what we currently are lining up. All of the fellowships, when the application opens, are designated as either 1 or 2-year positions. The 1-year fellowships are a maximum of 12 months in length. We don't really have, if you're familiar with kind of old school PIA, we used to do some shorter term experiences. And while we still have short-term summer internships, we no longer have short-term fellowships. We have moved to a full year model. And so we're asking PIA fellows to commit to 1 or 2 years. Some of the fellowships that are 1 years will be renewable for a second year with the agreement of the host organization and the fellow. And fellows can also elect to transfer to a different post after their first year with us. And a note on eligibility. We don't restrict eligibility based on US citizenship or residency status, but in the application, we ask that candidates present a compelling rationale for how they would contribute to our mission of contributing to global and US-Asia exchange, especially. We don't have an age limit, but as I mentioned, many of our posts are entry level. And so both new and less new grads are encouraged to apply for any position that they feel prepared to fill. One question that we often get is about whether PIA fellow applicants are applying to the country or the position or the program. And it's kind of a combination of all of those things. Applicants can indicate their preference when we publish our list of available positions for the coming year. And we do our best to match host organizations and applicants, giving host organizations the skill set and academic background that they've requested for the work at hand, and also having fellows who are maybe open to things that they hadn't considered in the past. And so we, in most cases, are able to give our finalists one of the posts that they'd indicated as a preference. And in some cases, we'll have a conversation and ask, we have this really cool position. You didn't indicate it as a preference, but we think that you would be a good fit for it. Is that something you would be willing to consider? And a lot of our alumni report that some of what we call our curveballs, the positions that people hadn't initially indicated as a preference, ended up being really life-changing. So it's really a mix of thinking about what country fellows have an interest in, if they are coming in with any background or experience that might contribute to the work that they're doing, and then thinking about both host organization and program needs. So what are some of the benefits for the fellows? Sorry, I'm having a little screen sharing issue right now. 1 second. Okay, the benefits of being a PIA fellow. So fellows, in addition to receiving a paid work placement, fellows receive a stipend from the host organization that is meant to cover the cost of living in the local environment. We tell people that it's not a money-making endeavor, but the stipend that they receive from the host organization should be sufficient to cover people's basic needs for that 1 or 2 years. We also provide support in the form of orientation and ongoing programming. And the ongoing programming is a relatively new component of our work. We have touch points with fellows at roughly each month, whether it's through PIA staff or program alumni. And we have programming that is sometimes in person, including welcome events, sometimes virtual, including what we're calling for shorthand pods, so opportunities to connect with people with similar identities or affinities and interests, or who are interested in the same kinds of career paths. And within the pod structure, we will have an opportunity for ongoing both professional and cross-cultural development. As they're immersed in some of Asia's most vibrant organizations and communities, our host organizations will provide opportunities to integrate into the community, whether that is through experiences with coworkers, in many cases, learning the local language, and we also provide language grants to allow people to pursue language study. And then logistical support in securing the visa. So while it is the fellow's responsibility to secure the appropriate visa for the circumstances that they'll be in, we do offer a lot of guidance from host organizations and then also from the PIA staff. And certain organizations also offer additional benefits like accommodation or airfare as part of the fellowship. And that's included in our fellowship descriptions document that we publish alongside with our guide when the application opens, which we anticipate happening in late August this year. Fellows will receive mentorship and support from their program directors, both before departure and while in Asia. And then fellows who will be in teaching positions are also given a TEFL or Teaching English as a Foreign Language online certification course, which in many cases is necessary to secure the appropriate visa. We invite experts, we call them country advisors, to discuss a variety of topics, starting with orientation and moving into the fellowship year, such as how to navigate new work dynamics that might be influenced by culture, tools for building resilience as fellows encounter a new living and working environment, and also ways to improve risk assessment and management skills while abroad. After meeting at orientation, many fellows stay in very close contact with others in their cohort, whether they're based in the same city or on opposite ends of the continent. And then fellow-initiated projects like book clubs and other affinity groups are also a common feature of the fellow experience. A lot of fellows report that these fellow-to-fellow connections provide vital support during their fellowship year. Our country advisors are dear friends of our program and many are PIA alumni. We rely on them for local knowledge, for our own risk assessment and safety assessment as we're approaching a new country. And then they're also really warm hosts. And so we invite them to connect with fellows before they arrive. And then once they're on program, they usually host a welcome reception. And they also provide their contact information in case fellows have any questions. They are not health and safety advisors, so this is another shift in the last few years for those of you who are more familiar with the program. In order to really provide best-in-class care, we partner with external providers, including International SOS, to provide 24/7 emergency contact lines, as well as travel medical insurance and evacuation if necessary. So from a health and safety perspective, we've moved into a much more robust space. And we also have a layer of mental health support in the form of workplace options, which fellows can call as part of our international SOS and insurance plan if they need additional mental health support, whether in the workplace or beyond. And we're committed to offering fellowship opportunities to diverse and talented applicants. And we are really committed to deepening that pool. We also wanted to make sure that finances were not a barrier to participation. And so we're now reimbursing the cost of obtaining the visa and work permits prior to departure. We have travel grants available for any host organization that doesn't currently provide round-trip airfare. And we also have some emergency funds if there should be a sudden change in the cost of living in the country, which we'd seen in the past couple of years with rapid inflation. And so that's also something that fellows can apply for based on need. We are also moving toward eventually having 100% coverage for fellowship costs. Next, I'd like to give a little overview of our timeline, and we can break that up into basically different stages from application and interview and nomination to award and pre-departure. And so for the application stage, we'll be opening around August of this year and we'll close around the beginning of November. The specific dates are always subject to change, but this year's target dates are August 31st for opening and usually closing around November 1st. I'll discuss in a little more detail what our application looks like and the kind of specific calendar for 2024 in a moment. After we've received the applications, we review them for kind of a mission alignment. So are applicants ready to take up life and work in a new environment? Are they willing to engage personally and professionally with new people? And do they have the flexibility that will help them contribute to cross-cultural understanding? We then also review based on the skill sets that organizations have indicated would be helpful for each post, and we make sure that our finalist applicants fit into that. We select a top tier of individuals to interview with PIA staff, and these usually take place in early January to early February. And then after interviewing, where we continue to assess the applicant's fit with our program mission and with host organization needs, we move into a nomination phase where we notify applicants that they are finalists for an organization, They will have the opportunity to create some tailored materials that they would if they were applying to any kind of job. So kind of in line with the position, a resume or CV and a cover letter. Some host organizations require something like a writing sample or additional evidence of the ability to perform the work. And then some host organizations also interview applicants. They have the opportunity to do so. And so we aim to come up with a finalist, a single finalist for each open position by mid to late March. And based on what host organizations have indicated are their preferences, we'll begin extending offers. Once an applicant receives an offer, we ask that they come back to us within 4 business days to let us know if they've accepted it. And that's in order to make sure that we're able to maintain our process, make sure that host organizations secure a fellow in a timely fashion. And also, if someone does not intend to take the position, it enables us to offer it to somebody else. And so we'll move down basically our rankings that the host organizations have sent to us, extending offers. And the offer itself is not binding, but once an applicant accepts that offer, we ask that they do commit to the program. And we would then move into the award stage. So we'll be finalizing positions and making sure that everybody is well prepared moving into the pre-departure stage. Fellows placed in teaching positions will complete the TEFL certification course between April and mid-May, and then all fellows will attend a mandatory virtual orientation in the spring. They can attend from wherever they are currently located. Fellows are also applying for visas during this stage with support from their host organization. And the specific departure dates vary by position, but most new fellows will leave for Asia in August, with a smaller number of posts beginning in July or September. We do note for both fellows and those who will be supporting them that accepting the fellowship and arriving on site are contingent upon receipt of the proper visa. We do our best to work with both national bodies and with host organizations to make sure that we're able to secure that visa before we move forward with the application. But ultimately, things can change. And so we want to make sure that fellows understand that the visa process should begin early and that they need to follow the steps that the host organizations have indicated. We'll be holding information sessions this fall to provide more detail about the application process. These will be held virtually, and resources will be available on our new website, which is scheduled for launch in early August. So if you try to look at us now on the internet, you'll look at our older version of the website. We have a brand new and much nicer one coming very soon. But let me know at the end of today's session if you'd be interested in signing up for our mailing list to be kept up to date on our application opening and webinar dates, or to receive an application guide to help connect us with talented candidates. So we often get asked what we're looking for. And given the breadth of organizations and communities and cultures that PIA fellows might be engaging with, it's kind of impossible to define a truly ideal applicant. Our fellows do come from a wide range of majors and backgrounds. We've had engineers who have never studied abroad before to fine arts majors looking to leave their comfort zone. We have some people who are looking to kind of continue a professional trajectory, and others who aren't sure what they want to do yet and are really just looking for a new experience. But one thing that all of our fellows have in common is that they understand and are committed to upholding our 6 fellow values. And these values are transformation, immersion, relationship building, humility, mutuality and interdependence, and contributing to the community. And these values are things that we think of as practical ways that PIA fellows can fulfill PIA's mission in their host communities. And so these are the main qualities that we look for throughout our evaluation process. We like when fellows describe being willing to putting the needs of others before their own and really do their best to understand the community that surrounds them. We want our fellows to want to leave their comfort zones and to be resourceful and resilient while they're navigating the unexpected challenges of their post, and who will maximize the transformative potential of the fellowship, both in professional and personal ways after a year or two on PIA. So our successful applicants are those who are seeking a transformative experience, who want to contribute to their host organization, who are interested in facilitating cultural exchange through relationship building, and who demonstrate readiness to function effectively in a new living and working environment. So I'll share a few of our class of 2022 fellows to kind of illustrate a number of different ways that PIA fellows have come to us with some background in Asia, sometimes with no background in Asia. And as you'll see, we offer opportunities to talented graduates who may have really deep experience personally and professionally, or no experience at all. So our first highlight is Ray Fitch, who graduated from Colorado College with a major in English, focusing on creative writing. And Ray spent 4 years as an outdoor educator leading up to their fellowship. They then taught English at Mayfalawang University in Chiang Rai, Thailand, and were able to share their love of storytelling with students from throughout the region. They also enjoy outdoor activities with new friends in the scenic landscape of northern Thailand. Our next highlighted fellow is Fatou Jallow, who is a graduate of the University of Houston with a major in public health and a minor in women and gender studies. Fatou has been interested in global health from a young age, and she first worked at a health startup in West Africa after graduating. And the skills she developed there aligned with the specific needs of the Asia Injury Prevention Foundation in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. And so that was a really nice match that we were able to make. And Fatou has also lived in a number of countries and was able to really dive into the global NGO sphere and think about how messaging might resonate in different ways in different communities. Emu Antone graduated from Princeton University with a degree in operations research and financial engineering. She had also worked for a number of years in the financial sector as an investment analyst. And then after studying abroad in Spain and India, she became really passionate about socially responsible investing. And so we were able to match Emu with a PIA post at Hasbank in Mongolia, where Emu provides financial services for small and medium-sized businesses and households. And she feels like she's doing meaningful work at the intersection of finance and climate change reduction, while also having the ability to immerse in Mongolia's very inviting culture. And finally, we do have a fellow with some family background in Asia. Alexa O'Brien grew up in Seattle and has family ties to Japan. Her parents actually met through PIA a number of years ago. And after graduating from Vanderbilt University with degrees in political science and education studies, Alexa did Teach for America in Eastern North Carolina and taught fourth and fifth grade reading. And now she's doing a PIA fellowship at the Nizawa Sake Brewery in Miyagi Prefecture, wrapping up this month. And she works at the brewery's distribution center, and she might do everything from preparing crates of bottles for shipment overseas to actually engaging in the brewing process herself, and in some cases, writing up marketing and messaging for English-speaking audiences. And so she's gained a lot of firsthand experience in a variety of sectors through this fellowship. So as you've seen here, many of our fellows have no family background, no prior experience in Asia, but just a really strong interest in learning more about the world. And others do have existing connections, but are looking to deepen and expand them. So another question that we often get asked is why PIA as opposed to doing a different program or just going independently. And so knowing that our applicants are often weighing many different options, we wanted to offer a little bit of perspective on what we think makes PIA really special and what we hope fellows will gain for the program. So we like to say that PIA offers a change in perspective, a job that matters, and a community for life. And we think that PIA fellowships offer the opportunity for personal growth. They also provide meaningful work and strong connections through that work to Asia and people in their host communities. With regard to a change in perspective, fellows have the opportunity to immerse in and learn from a new place and culture. We think that PIA fellows are able to increase their empathy and open-mindedness, as well as their humility and flexibility and resilience. And our recent surveying seems to indicate that this is true. So 97% of our alumni reported that their fellowship helped to build their ability to see things through new eyes and correct misconceptions that they might have held. And most importantly, building soft skills that they think will serve them well in a variety of work environments in the future. With regard to a job that matters, we do make sure that these are meaningful work opportunities. We work with our host organizations to ensure that the work that fellows are doing has resonance in the community, and that will also allow them to employ their current skills and build new ones. And we crunched some numbers a little while ago, and we think around, probably by now, around 18,000 people are impacted by PIA fellows annually. PIA fellows also have the chance to pilot their own projects in and out of work, and a little over half of our fellows have initiated this kind of project or activity. For example, one fellow who was in Japan for the past year and will be continuing for a second year has family roots in the African continent. His parents were immigrants to the United States, and the host organization where he's working is located right next door to a dormitory that houses African workers in Tokyo. And so he was able to connect his host organization with the workers who are right next door and provide mentorship opportunities that worked in multiple directions. And so people from the African continent were able to interact with their Japanese counterparts who were engaged in similar kinds of projects, and also help with language learning, both English and Japanese for both parties. And both organizations have indicated that they would like to continue working with this fellow. So that was a really exciting way of seeing some of PIA's work in action. And when we refer to a community for life, we really do mean it. We want people to build lifelong bridges to Asia and across the world. And when PIA applicants come in, we're always impressed with the number of languages that they speak already. Although having language knowledge is by no means required. Most of our posts are primarily in an English environment, but we do encourage people to learn the local language or languages in order to better connect with the community. And by the time they finished their fellowships, 92% of PIA alumni speak at least one language in addition to their mother tongue, and over 50% speak at least two. And 2 out of 3 PI alumni have returned to their host community at least once after their fellowship, and around 10% maintain a long-term residency in Asia, either in their initial host community or beyond. So when we say a change in perspective and a job that matters and a community for life, it's not just kind of a catchphrase, it's something that we really do think informs all of our programming. And the impact of a PA fellowship is long lasting, both in terms of career and also in relationships and personal growth and perspective. And so we really hope that more and more people have an opportunity to apply for the program, and we're making sure that our cohort really mirrors the United States in a lot of different ways, so that people that are in the host communities can really also encounter Americanness or people who have spent time in the US in new ways as well. A little bit more about our fellowship timeline for the 2024 to 25 cycle. So we do begin usually about a year in advance. So in September 2023 is when our application will open for the 2024 fellowship placement. It'll probably be a couple days before that, actually. So we're really looking at the end of August. November is when the application will close, and then we will be engaging in interviews in January and February. The interviews with PIA staff are scheduled in partnership with the applicants. And so while they typically take place during our working hours, so East Coast time in the United States, we recognize that many of our applicants are already overseas or in different time zones. And so we do have some flexibility in that scheduling. We encourage people to reach out to us if they would need a time that's outside of what we have already made available. In February, we'll forward nominations to host organizations, including the materials that we ask our finalists to generate. And then our host organization selection process happens in March of 2024. We will finalize those placements in March and April. And we do ask that once fellows have made the commitment that they stick to it. I know that in this new environment, we've seen a lot more difficulty making decisions, especially as people have a wealth of opportunities before them. And so we're really also looking for people who are committed to the program. We hope that once they have made this commitment that they follow through. And for our reputation, the reputation of future fellows, we want to make sure that our host organizations are able to bring in the people that have indicated they're willing to go there. And then in April, we'll begin the TEFL certification course for teachers. June is when we'll be hosting the pre-departure orientation. It will be held over 2 weekends. It's usually the first and last weekend in June. And there will be both live programming via Zoom, as well as asynchronous components that will be offered usually through Canvas, and our fellows will engage with material from some of our key partners, including Global Equity Forward. They'll have the opportunity to interact with one another, to engage in discussion, and to pose questions, and then we'll bring them back together for another live weekend before they start embarking for their fellowships. And again, August is when most fellowships do begin. Some of our host organizations have a kind of July to July model, and so there are some that will begin a little bit earlier. And then for some teaching posts, because of the academic calendar, those might start a little bit later, so going into September. And then once we know when fellows will be going on their program, we will make sure that their insurance coverage begins to overlap with the terms of their contract with their host organization. One final note is that while PIA makes the placements and engages in the selection process and then also puts on ongoing programming for fellows, they are employees of their host organizations. And so they're subject to local laws and regulations. We have additional layers of support and structure that we ask that our host organizations respect and comply with regarding bullying and harassment. But I did just want to kind of briefly point out that local laws are in force. We don't have the ability to enforce US law in all the places where we operate. And so we help fellows to understand what different modes of conduct might be, what is kind of respectful in different environments, and then also to kind of be conscious of what the local situation might be as they're thinking about what they're saying, who they're interacting with, what they're doing in their non-working hours. So to wrap up, I wanted to leave some time for questions here today, but I also would welcome you to write to us if anything else comes up for you. You can contact me directly. We have new email addresses, which are new and shiny, and so I will be checking that new account starting today. So my contact information is mgiblin@princetonasia.org. You can also direct potential applicants to write to apply@princetonasia.org. And starting hopefully August 1st, we'll have also a shiny new website at princetonasia.org. But I'd also love to open it up for questions to all of you right now.
Molly, I have a couple of questions from the group chat and some preliminary questions from the registration form, if that's okay.
Sure.
Cool. And that'll give folks a couple of minutes to send in their questions in the group chat. All righty. One attendee asked about the students that they advise, particularly they are environmental studies advisors. Can you clarify the opportunities that exist for them with PIA?
Yes, absolutely. So all of our positions are really open to anybody, but our host organizations will indicate if there are particular skill sets or academic backgrounds that they prefer. Right now, we have a few that will be launching this year that are in line with kind of environmental sustainability and environmental studies. One is at Gerhub, which is located in Mongolia. It helps to connect previously nomadic people who have moved into the Ger district of Ulaanbaatar with social services. And then it also sort of connects those people out to the world. Many of them are artisans producing things for consumption, including rugs and other handicrafts. And so helping them to get a sustainable wage for those and setting up opportunities for microfinance. We're looking at expanding that kind of position in the future. And I think that it was one of the more attractive opportunities that we had this year. We also work with the International Water Management Center in Colombo, Sri Lanka, which also in the past we've had other partnerships in countries that we'll be looking to expand in the future. And so our kind of the people who are coming in with a really strong environmental focus also find that a really rewarding post. They might be working on the actual water management. They might be working on marketing and communications with the public or with donors. And so I think that's one opportunity that might stand out as well. And we are always looking at new host organizations. And so we anticipate having more of these types in the future. Beyond the kind of like hard skill set areas, we also have a couple of think tanks that we're working with, including the Milken Institute in Singapore and CAPRI, and I'm notoriously bad at acronym ability to kind of expand that out into real language. The Center for Asia Pacific Innovation and Resilience, or something like that, resilience and innovation. And those folks are also involved in communications and analysis related to environmental sustainability and processes around public health information sharing that might kind of relate to environment. And so again, a lot of these are kind of multi-skilled areas, and we've seen the people enter them with a really firm background in the discipline. We've also seen people who are just really kind of interested and passionate be able to develop those skills, and many of our organizations are willing to kind of train people once they get on the ground. We do really ask the organizations to share with us what they're looking for, and then we try to match an applicant based on that. And so if they say, you know, you sent us somebody with no skills in the past, please give us someone with an actual environmental science degree this time, we try to make sure that happens. But if they tell us that they're really just looking for somebody bright and motivated, we can also work with people who might be looking to work on developing those skills.
Great. Sounds like I'm sorry. It sounds like students have the opportunity to apply their interdisciplinary skills, which was definitely something I was very interested in when I was a student. We had a question about the application. Is there a fee to apply for the fellowship?
There is not. There was in the past, and it's a common misconception that there still is. We eliminated the fee several years ago, and so there is no fee to apply, and there is no placement fee. So essentially, it is a cost-free application and placement process.
I'm sure students love to hear this, that the application fee was gotten rid of. Next question we have from the group chat. I'm going to back up just a little bit so I don't miss Leslie's question. How do applicants demonstrate need? Is that through a FAFSA or SAR report? What do you look for?
We actually don't ask them to demonstrate need. Our applications ask them to describe how the grant would help them to be able to take up the fellowship. And so in some cases, people have already been employed and independent for several years, are not relying on family resources. And so, for those who are coming out of something like AmeriCorps with a relatively low salary, affording a $2,000 plane ticket is going to be a really heavy lift. Others might testify to coming from a low income background, and others might just say this is a $3,000 plane ticket and that would be expensive for anybody. So we do try to distribute the resources that we have as equitably as possible. Some of them are made possible through the generosity of donors, and they're earmarked for specific countries or organizations. And others are, we have a fund that we also can apply. And so how this works in practice is that starting with basically the moment that they know that they're going and up until a month after they've arrived in their location, fellows can submit an application for a travel grant, which would cover round trip airfare or a one-way ticket, depending on what they've purchased. And we evaluate how much we have in the way of funding. And if we were to divide that equally among all fellows, how much would we have available? We see if there's any funding that might be earmarked for specific countries or host organizations, and we distribute that first. And then we also usually give people at least something if they've applied to defray the cost if we can't write it off entirely. And then there's also an opportunity to apply again toward the end if people are purchasing another one-way ticket home, or if they haven't managed to save up enough to cover the round trip version of the ticket. And we do attempt to give people at least something toward that, even if we can't cover the entire cost. And I think that people sort of see it as an honor system. So the ones who are coming in with a lot of either family or independent resources do tend to buy their own tickets. Many of our host organizations do cover part of or all of the round trip air ticket. And then for those who don't need it, they tend not to apply. And we're not really looking for anything in particular. And we're not kind of putting ourselves in the position of determining whether somebody who did or did not have a Pell Grant is more or less deserving, but we're really just trying to distribute as much as possible the funds that we do have available for this purpose.
Great. Next question, and at this point, I would love to welcome advisors to raise their hand or unmute themselves to ask their question. While we wait on folks to raise their hand, I can move on to the next question from the registration form. Are international students eligible to participate?
They are. We don't have a citizenship requirement. We do ask that in the application, everyone makes a statement about their ability to contribute to US-Asia mutual understanding. And so what that means can be really different depending on different candidates. Sometimes people have spent 4 years in the US studying. Sometimes people have not spent a ton of time in the US. They might be from NYU Shanghai or another global campus, but they're committed to the idea of helping bring the world together in some way. And so the citizenship lack of requirement is intentional. We do really want to make sure that we're welcoming all kinds of people as long as they're able to contribute to our mission. One thing that we do ask that both applicants and advisors kind of be aware of is that for international students, we are not an educational organization, nor are we an employer. Fellows are the employees of their host organizations. And so this could have an impact on people's long-term ability to remain in the US if that is what they desire. We have had people who are kind of on a green card trajectory participate in the program, but they do need to be aware that we're not able to kind of vouch for them for OPT or other similar programs.
Great. Can you also remind me, there were or were not language requirements to be eligible?
It depends on the position. Most positions do not have a language requirement. Many of our organizations, especially for those who will be teaching English, will have an operating environment that is in English. There are some positions where having language skills are either highly desirable or in a couple of cases required. It's rare among our fellowships, but there are some parts of the world, especially the sake brewery in Japan, where just because there isn't a lot of English spoken in the environment, having language skills is kind of essential. But that will be clearly indicated in the fellowship description once we publish the application. There will be required skills and desired skills. Language often falls in the desired skills area, and we welcome people who are coming in with language knowledge, but the vast majority of our positions do not have any kind of language, either desired or required skill set.
Great. And I guess a follow-up question to that is, how would applicants demonstrate a readiness to live abroad if they have had no study abroad experience before, especially in the last couple of years when that's been a little difficult?
Yeah, that's a great question. We phrase the questions in the application pretty carefully so that people can testify to things in different ways. And so we will not necessarily ask about how have you acclimated to living abroad before. We would ask instead something like, how have you created understanding across difference, or how have you found community in a new place? And I know that even that is challenging in the last few years. And so we really welcome people to kind of describe any kind of interaction that they think might help us understand how they work with others, how they handle ambiguity, how they might deal with something that they hadn't been expecting. So we're really just looking for maybe broader life skills that could be developed in a new environment abroad. They could also be developed in moving to a new city for college, or even just interacting with a new person in a more informal way. And we do have people who are going on the program this year who had not been outside of their hometown before. And so it is very possible to be a compelling applicant without any experience, even moving into different places in the US.
Great, yeah. I admire those students jumping into a year-long program with no study abroad or abroad experience in general. Wow. Um, I guess I have another follow-up question to that. Are there certain personal qualities that you have found that make participants able to get the most out of their program? What do these students with no study abroad experiences have that make them successful with you?
Yeah, I think the most successful fellows that we've had tend to be people who are a little bit intrepid, even if they don't have experience doing that in the past, that they're kind of willing to go into a new setting with an open mind, and meet people where they are. That they don't need everyone around them to be exactly what they were expecting, or to behave in ways that are already familiar to them. They're willing to avoid rushing to judgment, and to really try to engage in the creation of better understanding, and to do a lot of reflective work. So when they feel discomfort, what is causing that discomfort? What will they need to do to create an environment that contributes to learning? And so in my career, I've talked a lot about kind of the comfort learning and panic zones, and what can an individual do to create a support structure in a place where they don't have one already, to begin to cultivate a community, even if they don't necessarily know people in the place where they'll be moving. And a lot of our host organizations are really great, and kind of hands-on, and they really do help people to connect both in the workplace and beyond. But it does also, I think, a good immersive experience kind of necessitates being able to take a couple of extra steps. A lot of host communities do have a lot of international people kind of circulating in and out. And so it might not always be the first thing that locals think to do is let's go befriend this new fellow that's here for a year. So I think being willing to kind of reach out and put in a little extra effort to get to know people and to cultivate relationships is really important.
I completely agree. The um, just having a community is very important when you're living abroad and you're by yourself. It can be a very lonely experience. So having the ability to um, build that community for yourself is so important.
Right.
Um,
And if I can just jump in a little bit more, one of our recent alumni kind of presented this really nicely, in a past webinar, um, wanting to make sure that we're not confusing being outgoing or a gregarious or an extrovert with success on the program. And she identifies as an introvert. I also do. I'm a little bit shy in new environments, but it is very possible for people who are not necessarily going to like go up to a stranger and engage in a conversation to be successful in the program, in part because there is a lot of introspection that is possible, and kind of sitting back, observing what are the norms, how are people interacting with one another, what seems to be the best way of moving forward in this new space. So I think that people of all personalities can absolutely be great fellows, but it's more about the kind of willingness to think about difference, and not kind of rush in and need to make everything exactly like how it was in your home space.
right. We have a question from Marilyn, if you want to unmute yourself.
Sure. Thank you for taking it. I thought of another question while you were talking. For the interview process, how long I assume they're on Zoom or by telephone, but when they are and so about how long are they? And then when they interview with the potential host organization, how does that work?
Wonderful questions. So for our interview, last year it was 45 minutes over Zoom. About 30 minutes of that was us asking questions, and then we left 15 minutes open for the applicant to ask questions. The way that the process worked last year was that they already had a sense of which host organizations they might be matched with. We usually gave them a range of between 2 and 3. Um, and so some of them took the opportunity to ask more specific questions about the host organizations, but many also asked us questions about the living and working environment, um, questions related to maybe personal background and identity. For example, if somebody is an Asian American going into a place where their parents were from, especially if there were kind of political considerations. Would that disadvantage them? Would that advantage them? Would there be any an inability to place them? And I mean, the answer is we want everybody of all backgrounds and identities to feel very welcome in the program, and that we work with our host organizations to make sure that that is also the case. For the host organization interviews, it really depends a lot on the organization itself and what they're looking for. So we have some organizations who are really just excited about having somebody relatively youthful who is willing to pitch in and do the work. Others need somebody who has maybe a little bit more life experience or professional experience in this sphere. And so they might ask them cross-cultural or intercultural questions. You know, if you were in a given situation, how would you respond, to kind of show that they're willing to be adaptable and flexible. They might ask them some more specific questions about their skill set or professional experience. And I think across the board, we've seen both in our own interviews and host organization interviews, scenarios are pretty popular ways of kind of getting people to think through how they would respond in a given situation. And I think that can tell us a lot about not just people's existing experience, but how they might be thinking about interacting with others in the future. And so I think the format might vary, but people's ability to testify to different things is important. And I think one of the things that we might see develop a little more robustly in the future is people being able to kind of provide evidence or examples of what they're saying. And so if they come in saying, well, I'm a really adaptable person, what does that look like for you? What does it mean to you to be adaptable? When have you done that? What's an example in the past that showcases your adaptability for us so that we know that this is something that you are capable of? And then I'm looking, I think I'm seeing a couple of other questions in the chat about how many applicants we have and whether fellows stay the entire time. The applicant numbers vary a lot. I've been in this role for a little under a year. So last year was my first application cycle. We had about 8 times as many applicants as we had open positions. And that's kind of our target range. However, we think that as we move back into kind of full mode, we were operating in a limited fashion after the pandemic. We want to make sure that our programs are sustainable. And so as we expand the number of posts, I think it will look less competitive, perhaps, while we're still looking for very talented individuals. And then fellows should try to remain in their host community for the length of their fellowship. There are reasons for people to come back, but it is meant to be an immersive experience, and there's also a significant cost involved with coming home. Many of the host organizations who do provide plane tickets provide them for kind of arriving on site and then going home at the end of the experience. And so if it's a 2-year fellowship, making that 2-year commitment is good, but we don't prohibit travel. And so many fellows do visit one another across the region, and we encourage that. We think it's part of the kind of bigger PIA experience. And then for orientation, whether it includes a lot of cultural training, this is always a question that we think through. And in my past career, I worked with study abroad students. And so the big question is, do you give them the kind of do's and don'ts for a particular location, or do you give them more kind of general training? And so we've tried to strike a balance there. So we focus a lot on intercultural development. And so being able to work across difference, however that presents itself. And that can happen in any workplace, in any environment. You're going to meet people who are different from you, who have different communication styles, who do things in ways that you're not familiar with. And that also, I think, helps in some of the countries where we operate. There are kind of multiple local cultures that might be the result of immigration. It might be the result of different modes of national formation after colonization. And so we don't want to kind of create norms where they might not exist. That might be misleading for people. But we also do invite our program alumni to share some best practices on a kind of country-specific or even organization-specific level. And so if somebody is moving into into a city where you might meet people from all around the world. This might look different than if you're going to a rural area where there might be fewer foreigners. And so we do really want to make sure that we're equipping people in a variety of ways to be able to engage in the immersive experience and to kind of be a respectful guest in their host environments.
So thank you for that.
Alrighty. If there are no other questions today, I would love to just give Molly another special thank you for joining us today. I'm not seeing any other questions trickle in. So with that, I'm happy to close out today's call. Please do feel free to contact me as well as Molly if you have any questions about the Princeton Asia Fellowship.